So recall the isogonal conjugate of a point X with respect to a triangle AB. It's basically found by reflecting the covariance through X about each one of the corresponding angular bisectors, and you find that those three reflections, these faint gray lines here, they will converge at a point known as the isogonal conjugate of X. Now on the right here, I'm actually asking an interesting, at least to me, question. Let's start from a triangle T, ABC, not necessarily an equilateral, it can be any triangle, and a fixed point P in its interior or exterior, okay? Now I can certainly get the isogonal conjugate of P with respect to T, which in this picture is being shown as P prime. Now the question I want to ask is whether there are rigid transformations of T such that you preserve P prime, meaning here's one T prime that is a rigid transformation of ABC, and I'm going to compute the isogonal conjugate of P with respect to this T prime, and I want to find out if it lands on the same P prime. In the case being shown here, it's going to land at P prime prime pretty close to my intended P prime. This suggests that I can actually tweak the position of my rigid transformation, 2 translations and 1 rotation, such that P prime prime will actually land exactly on P prime. Now when you do this numerically, you get a pretty surprising geometry. Consider this 3-dimensional space. X and Y flow along the slices of this 3D space, and theta, the rotation, flows vertically. Okay, so and the bottom and top faces are identified because theta is varying from 0 to 2 pi. When you actually impose a constraint that P prime prime be equal to P prime, these are the solutions on rigid transformation space, that is to say x, y, and theta, that satisfy that. And what you get are 4 strands. They look like DNA, kind of DNA. You know, I'm joking that this is the DNA of the isogonal transformation. So there are these 4 strands. The central one corresponds to nudges of the triangle continuously about its current location, whereas the other 3 are separate loci of isogonal invariance. Okay, so you can look at this picture here, this beautiful picture from a number of angles, but what you end up finding out is that they truly depict 3 independent isogonals, 3 independent spirals. Now these spirals are being drawn here with some thickness because of a limitation of Mathematica. I'm using this region plot 3D function, and it becomes numerically unstable when you try to just to draw a region that is exactly satisfying my condition. So I'm actually giving it a little threshold here, and this is thickening these 3 spiral space curves. Now what will the triangles look like dynamically if I actually traverse these? So you can see here that for every theta I have 4 solutions, right? So if you look here, the 4 strands are intersecting the theta equals 0 plane in 4 specific points, 4 distinct points. A central one, which is the 0, 0 point. You can see up here, this is the 0, 0, 2. And then 3 other points. Now let's look at what this looks like in the Euclidean space. So I've done the simulation here, and I'm at theta 0 situation. So you can see here, right off the start, that if I pick a particular triangle, and I pick the scalene one, and I also pick the P interior to the scalene triangle, its isogonal conjugate will fall within this triangle. So we know that isogonal conjugates of interior points are sent to other interior points. So it maps the interior of a triangle to itself, and it maps the exterior to the exterior. So you have these other 3 triangles here for which P is exterior, and believe it or not, they're sending this P via isogonal conjugation back to GP. So let's look at the entire set. Now that middle strand represents a continuous, right, translational transformation starting from our reference triangle. So I'm depicting that middle strand here with a gray, and the other 3 strands are being depicted in red, green, and blue. So this is what you get. Their dance seems to be a non-trivial one. Remark how the red one is actually going through the triangle up here, and when the blue goes through that zone, it's not going to go. It's not going to intersect the triangle. So their motion is not in any way symmetric, It is true that they're all at the same theta rotation, amount of rotation with respect to the original triangle, but their translation in space is following those three spirals. So I would be very interested in starting to research what various loci of triangle centers are of these four triangles to see if there's any harmonies here. But I thought this was a pretty cool phenomenon. You can see here that green is basically staying clear on the entire setup. And of course, if I change P or I change the triangle, I'm going to get a different geometry for those four spirals and therefore different kinematics here. But, you know, this is just my first stab at this problem. Perhaps it's a well-known problem. I'm just trying to figure out if there's any interesting geometry here. So let's complete another turn. So for example, let's take a look at the 180-degree location, which is about here, right? Let's go back a bit. Let's just try to stop this at 180, about here. And you can see here that the four triangles are flipped 180 degrees with respect to the center one, but they appear at different translations. And also notice that, as required by the isogonal transformation, P is external to the three triangles, so GP is also going to be external, whereas for the center one, they're both internal. All right, so I'll see you on the next video.